And Chinese automaker BYD has overtaken Tesla in quarterly revenue for the first time, driven by surging global demand for hybrid vehicles.
BYD is indeed looking. However, we have been very active in our action, especially in the deployment of new energy.
Imagine an electric vehicle with an unlimited speed range, zero carbon emissions, and a charging time of just 2 minutes, all at nearly half the price of a Tesla Cybertruck. As impossible as all of this may sound, it was the promise BYD's CEO made when he announced the cold fusion engine. This new engine is a groundbreaking machine set to take over the industry once it gets released. With all the wild promises the CEO has made regarding this engine, are its capabilities really possible? And if they are, how will the engine work? To find out, join us as we explore all the details of the powerful engine that promises to change the entire EV industry. Project Cold Fusion. It was the 22nd of November, 2024. Google's Android Auto was getting a lot of engagement. Apple's CarPlay software was improving with exciting updates, and the Tesla's latest Cybertruck model was pretty much dead on arrival.
This is the most eye-catching vehicle you'll see on America's roads today. Love it or hate it, Tesla Cybertruck.
Enter the latest player in the market, BYD Auto, headed by the company's co-founder and visionary Wang Chuanfu. The company at this point had established itself as a solid figure in the EV industry, stepping out entirely from producing internal combustion engines to reduce carbon emissions in their latest products. But everything changed about a week ago when the famous CEO took to the stage at a tech conference in Shanghai to unveil his company's latest operation, Project Cold Fusion. This ongoing initiative promises to produce an engine that would revolutionize the EV industry in ways the world has never dreamed of. With the many features promised by Wang during the conference, many fear this engine would break the industry in half, pushing away all competitors like Tesla, General Motors, and Ford out of hardware entirely. But for us to understand how this engine works and the many ways it would change the industry, let's first consider why the project exists. As we know, compared to traditional vehicles, EVs have lots of advantages, including low carbon emissions, low cost of maintenance, and relatively quiet operation. But these advantages come with lots of problems as well. For example, while carbon emissions from EVs are relatively lower, the process used in producing the batteries still causes harm to the environment. Even though the cost of maintenance is relatively low compared to traditional vehicles, the cost of getting an EV is still much higher than the average car. And finally, the quiet operation of EVs stand as a danger to pedestrians who are used to hearing the loud incoming sound of cars moving at high speeds. We haven't even talked about the problem of range anxiety, with many users complaining about how their vehicles run out of battery while driving out in the middle of nowhere due to unprecedented hazards like overheating or bad software optimizations. These problems have been huge setbacks to the industry from the get-go, making the use of these cars look more like gimmicks for rich people than practical solutions to the ever-increasing issue of climate change due to carbon emissions. These setbacks haven't had sustainable solutions for over a decade, and yet the cold fusion engine promises to solve all these issues in one go. As absurd as it sounds, it leads us back to the big question: how will it work? Well, let's find out. The cold fusion engine.
This is one of the greatest technological challenges humanity has ever faced. Get it right, and it holds out the potential for producing almost unlimited supplies of energy pretty much forever.
Wang Chuanfu described the cold fusion engine as a compact fusion reactor, using powerful isotopes of hydrogen as fuel. These isotopes would be fused to form helium while releasing great bursts of energy. It would be a huge step up from the previous equipment built by BYD Auto, now powering an improved lineup of plug-in hybrid electric vehicles that would rely not just on the engine, but also on the famous Blade battery produced by the company. This battery is known for being one of the best in terms of doing so much while being so little, but it still doesn't come close to this beast of a machine when it comes to features and innovation. The energy produced by the cold fusion engine would be in the form of powerful neutrons and raw thermal pulses, with the generated heat transferred to the thermal exchanger. This component would then convert the incoming heat into mechanical energy through a special turbine connected to an electric generator. It is this generator that would produce the energy needed to sustain all the electric components of the vehicle, including the motor. Of course, this process would no doubt create a lot of heat. So to counteract that hazard, the reactor would use powerful magnets to create a closed system. This way, the surface of the engine would stay cool even with the insides potentially reaching thousands of degrees within minutes, and even much higher when the engine is at full power. During the presentation, Wang was very specific on the nature of both isotopes, deuterium and tritium, stating that both of them would be used as fuel for the engine. These isotopes would be stored in special tanks under high pressure to keep them always ready for the fusion process, and would be sold at a price much cheaper than the best charging services offered by other companies like Tesla. With deuterium easily found and extracted from water and tritium being produced in most nuclear reactors, Wang promises that customers would find this to be a better source of energy than anything produced by the competitors. Instead of poisonous carbon, the fusion process of the cold fusion engine would release helium as a byproduct. Wang promised that many other components would be added to keep the users safe at all times. This includes multiple automatic shutdown systems in case of an emergency, radiation shields to keep all the dangerous stuff within the engine, and effective cooling systems to keep everything functional without overheating and other hazards. But as cool as all that sounds, we are just getting started. The Blade batteries.
BYD launched the game changer, the BYD Blade battery. The singular cells are arranged together in an array and then inserted into a battery pack like a blade.
With a promising engine capable of powering all the electric components of the vehicle all by itself, many were surprised to hear the CEO still talk about using the company's Blade battery, promising that it would be used along with the engine to make energy consumption as efficient as possible. While many struggled to understand, inside sources revealed that Wang plans on giving the EV a virtually unlimited range, looking to produce vehicles that keep going for many hours without needing to recharge anytime soon. This means no overheating, no deceleration, and no frequent stops along the way for recharging. While this promise might sound absurd on the surface, a much closer look shows us that it is very possible. If the engine is capable of doing everything promised by the CEO, then there would no longer be range anxiety, especially given how much more efficient using hydrogen fuel can be when compared with the average electric charge. When you add this with the safety and efficiency of Blade batteries, we are looking at a vehicle that could run at high speeds for whole days without needing to stop. These batteries would be slightly modified to be compatible with the fusion engine, especially with their latest quick recharge features. With the combined efficiency of the Blade batteries and the fusion engine, the vehicle would need less than 2 minutes to charge fully. But as impressive as that sounds, this feature only comes as an option, as the engine already has what it takes to keep the batteries charged, along with all the electric components. So like many people, you might be wondering why the battery is needed in the first place. After all, the engine already takes care of everything, and with inbuilt capacitors capable of storing lots of energy during operation, so why bother adding a battery? Could it be to increase cost? Well, the answer lies in the few limitations of the fusion engine. As powerful as it is, there is only so much an engine can do by itself. So to make up for this weakness, a backup battery is needed to keep things running smoothly at all times. Adding the battery would also come with lots of added benefits, like quicker response time from digital inputs and powering the entertainment systems, air conditioning, and other gadgets while the engine is preoccupied. Aside from that, it also stores the energy obtained from holding the brakes.
Regenerative braking is the recovery of kinetic energy during braking,
And provides the boost required for sudden acceleration during times of danger. But while all these promises are exciting to hear about, the fact remains that it is still in development. A closer look shows how unlikely it would be to produce an engine with such features in less than a decade, even though the CEO promises that cold fusion would be ready for release in 2030. Let's find out how. Current limitations of fusion technology. Considering the many technological limitations we have today, it is no surprise very few people know about this project. The reasons are endless. First of all, the conditions needed for hydrogen isotopes to fuse require soaring temperatures far above 1,000,000 degrees Celsius under immense pressure. Making a machine capable of generating this much heat but harmless enough to fit in a car is a huge engineering challenge that hasn't been fully resolved to this day. The only car in the world that comes close to this promise is the famous Hyundai Nexo, and it simply runs on hydrogen fuel without the need for nuclear fusions. The best small fusion reactors we have today are still in their experimental phase, while still being far from being portable enough to fit in a car. Secondly, unless tech scientists and engineers at Wang's headquarters have access to unseen materials unknown to the rest of the world, there are no known materials capable of withstanding the extreme heat, pressure, and degradation that come with a typical fusion engine. That doesn't even cover the superconducting magnets needed to contain the radioactive plasma while staying cool for as long as the engine is active. Thirdly, it is too complicated to be used in a car. Simply put, the amount of engineering it takes to convert heat energy from a fusion reactor to electricity requires large, complex protocols too large to fit into a car, unless each of these vehicles will be at least twice as large as a Tesla Cybertruck. And even though the company decides to go that route, those protocols are still under development, with long processes of experimentation that could take decades to pull off. Our research also shows that the neutrons produced by nuclear fusion reactions make surrounding harmless things turn radioactive over time. Given this limitation alone, using the fusion engine is simply not practical. Also keep in mind that the amount of money required to develop fusion technology is beyond astronomical, making many people wonder how Wang's company plans on making its products cheap enough to remain relevant, even while utilizing a very expensive engine. Producing the cold fusion engine in large numbers would cost an equivalent of over $30 billion with each stock, with each unit costing over $1 million. This alone makes the fusion engine look more like a bad investment than a positive input for the future of the company. Lastly, let's not forget the general public sentiment over the question of nuclear energy. Will it do more harm than good? While BYD might have the money and resources to pull this off the right way, whether or not it succeeds depends on the loyalty of the paying customer. With the public not being comfortable with nuclear energy due to its dark past associated with weapons of mass destruction, it is less likely that this project would succeed on a commercial level, or at least, not anytime soon. These problems are just a few out of several, but the CEO of BYD Auto remains confident it's going to work, assuring the public that his team is working hard to make sure the finished product is available and ready to be sold at affordable prices starting from 2030. Until that happens, we just have to wait and see what the company has in store for the future of the industry. So, what do you think? Is the cold fusion engine the future of the EV industry as Wang Chuanfu would have us believe? Or should we wait for a more practical alternative? Life within a convent was anything but simple. The authorities were meticulous about who they accepted, ensuring candidates were neither too young nor too old. You may wonder about the psychology behind this careful selection. The answer lies in the demands of convent life, which require physical and mental resilience. Very young girls were deemed unsuitable, not yet mature enough to handle the rigorous discipline. Similarly, older women were often considered too frail to endure the ascetic lifestyle. Only young women in the prime of their health were admitted, ensuring they could meet the stringent demands of their new life. At the heart of the convent was the abbess, the highest-ranking official and spiritual mother to the nuns. Her role was pivotal, as she wielded considerable authority and was responsible for the convent's spiritual and material well-being. This included overseeing the convent's possessions, such as land and finances, and ensuring that the nuns adhered strictly to their vows. The convent was among the most rigorously run institutions of medieval times, with the abbess maintaining a strict regimen to uphold the community's spiritual integrity and operational stability. This role extended beyond overseeing a convent. The abbess held significant social prestige. Typically, Women of noble descent or those with connections to influential and wealthy families within the church would ascend to this esteemed position. The path to becoming an abbess was often fraught with political intrigue, requiring support from powerful patrons. These positions were often filled through elections, making the endorsement of high-ranking church members crucial for success. The second in command, known as the prioress, played spiritual and administrative roles. Acting as the abbess's deputy, she held considerable authority over the nuns, ensuring that the strict rules of the convent were adhered to and administering discipline as necessary. She was responsible for managing work assignments and maintaining the smooth operation of the convent. While prioresses were not always of noble birth, they held significant power and were well connected within the religious community. Their appointments, too, could be influenced by political maneuvering both inside and outside the convent. The vast majority of nuns, however, did not rise to such high ranks. So, what was everyday life like for the typical nun in a medieval convent? Imagine starting your day with prayer in a dimly lit chapel, your eyes straining to see in the flickering candlelight. You're not there to see, though. You are there to chant psalms and hymns in Latin, your voice echoing off the cold stone walls. This repetitive, austere routine could weigh heavily on a person's mind, fostering a sense of isolation and monotony. Moreover, the constant penance and punishment used to reinforce monastic values might lead to feelings of guilt and unworthiness, creating a complex psychological landscape marked by humility and self-denial. Following these early morning prayers, the day's labor begins, encompassing a variety of tasks crucial to the convent's survival. Whether gardening, cooking, cleaning, or tending to livestock,
the nuns depart from their work. Things like sewing, cooking, and making communion hosts.
the work is demanding and unrelenting. Picture the nuns, toiling in silence or muttering prayers, their hands calloused and rough from constant work, sweat trickling down as they plant, weed, and harvest. The physical exhaustion from these daily chores and a lack of personal fulfillment might lead to long-term physical strain and a muted sense of personal identity. These nuns had to suppress their natural human instincts, leading to a life of profound internal conflict and repression, making one ponder the true cost of their devotion and sacrifice. Feeding, milking, and caring for animals like chickens, goats, sheep, and cows became routine, yet the repetition and lack of personal fulfillment could foster a sense of drudgery and monotony. These nuns were deprived of culinary excitement by processing milk into butter and cheese, preparing simple meals from homegrown grains and vegetables, and rarely indulging in meat except on special occasions. Such a lifestyle, where physical labor was paramount, might have left them feeling physically exhausted and mentally unfulfilled. In addition, the sexual repression and physical toll of convent life were profound. Cleaning became a collective duty, with nuns scrubbing, washing, and maintaining communal areas without modern conveniences. Hand-washing garments, repairing wooden structures, fixing leaking roofs, and gathering firewood for cooking and heating were arduous tasks. Imagine the strain of chopping firewood during the harsh winter months. With limited male presence, these women took on maintenance and repair work, leading to a physically demanding lifestyle. The young nuns caring for the elderly faced additional emotional and physical burdens, raising questions about the long-term effects of such a rigorous and austere existence. Some convents also took in patients from nearby communities, showcasing their extensive knowledge of herbal medicine.
We're not traditional nuns. We don't get up every morning at the crack of dawn and pray. Our prayer goes into our work. Our prayer goes into the medicine making. Our prayer goes into the plant.
The nuns diligently fed, bathed, and comforted the sick, using their herbal remedies to provide care. Mealtimes were far from lively. Nuns ate in silence while one of them read aloud from a religious text. This practice was intended to keep their minds focused on spiritual matters, even during meals. Imagine the impact of this daily routine, the relentless physical labor and the enforced silence. Would the constant work and quiet reflection sap their energy and spirit? Combining hard, unending tasks and an environment that minimizes personal interaction could lead to a profound sense of isolation and emotional fatigue. But there's more to discover about nuns and their secluded lives. The dark secrecy to nunnery lives. In the secluded world of convents, silence held profound significance, shaping the daily lives of the nuns with intentional and pervasive quietude. Many convents strictly observed periods known as the Great Silence, which extended from the evening prayer, compline, until the morning prayer, prime, the following day. This era of deep stillness allowed not even the faintest whisper to break the serenity. During these hours, nuns were compelled to communicate only through gestures or written notes, and even then, only when necessary. This practice of silence was not merely a rule, but a spiritual discipline that fostered introspection, contemplation, and a sense of communal devotion. Seclusion in convent life also encompassed the nuns' commitment to physical austerity as a spiritual purification.
This week, Catholic bishops are meeting in Baltimore to discuss the priest sex abuse crisis in the American church and will vote on measures to hold themselves accountable.
For many, self-mortification was a crucial aspect of their religious practice. This included fasting, wearing coarse hair shirts that irritated the skin, and even self-flagellation with whips. These harsh measures aimed to subdue bodily desires and bring the nuns closer to the divine, reflecting their deep yearning to emulate the suffering of Jesus Christ. The combination of silence and physical austerity created an environment of profound devotion and spiritual rigor, reinforcing the nuns' dedication to their faith and their separation from worldly life beyond the convent walls. Nighttime offered no relief for the nuns, unlike the rest of the populace, who would retire from their daily labors. As evening descended, the nuns gathered once more for the final prayer of the day, Compline. After this solemn ritual, they retreated to their austere quarters, small, sparsely furnished cells that provided minimal comfort. Their beds were often hard, sometimes consisting of straw mattresses on the floor, embodying their commitment to a life of asceticism, even in their moments of rest. Enveloped in the darkness and profound silence, the nuns' sleep was brief and austere as they embraced their life of self-denial, even in their dreams. This short rest period would soon end, as they were required to rise again after just a few hours to continue their rigorous routine. Each new day began similarly, reinforcing their dedication to a disciplined and devout existence, marked by continual prayer, work, and contemplation cycles. Now, things are about to get intriguing. Despite the diligent oversight of authorities, including the church, convents were not always the paragons of discipline and morality they aspired to be. Beneath the veneer of strict adherence to religious vows, various transgressions occurred behind the convent gates. The cloistered women, despite their dedication, often demonstrated their inherent humanity. These deviations started with minor infractions, such as nuns occasionally bending the rigid rules of their order. Over time, some nuns developed a pattern of rule-breaking, taking care to conceal their actions. Though largely hidden, their behavior highlighted the tension between their religious commitments' ideals and human nature's realities. In tracing the behaviors within convents, it becomes evident that the rule against owning valuables was one of the most frequently breached. The inherent human desire to possess beautiful things was strong even among medieval nuns, who found creative ways to bypass their vows of poverty.
I was so confused. It was like this sister is doing these sexual things to me, and I thought she was married to God.
Some would discreetly borrow fine clothing and jewelry, sometimes even lending and borrowing among themselves. Others took the riskier route of obtaining items from outsiders. In one notable instance, a convent in France made headlines because its nuns were accused of borrowing luxurious garments and trinkets from affluent patrons for their personal use. Similarly, the prohibition against keeping pets was another rule often ignored. Pets were seen as distractions from the nuns' spiritual duties and pure way of life. However, some nuns cherished animals deeply, choosing to keep them despite the clear violation of convent rules. These actions underscored the struggle between the nuns' human inclinations and the stringent demands of their religious commitments. Sister Joan of Leeds gained notoriety for her affection for cats, but her rebellious nature extended beyond this as she eventually staged her death to escape the convent. She crafted a dummy to take her place, then fled to start a new life beyond the convent walls. However, The most severe violations involved illicit relationships. These clandestine affairs represented the greatest breach of their vows, challenging the core of their commitment to a life of chastity and religious devotion. These relationships, conducted in secret, highlighted the persistent tension between human desires and the rigid expectations of convent life. These violations are nothing compared to the shocking ones we will uncover. The discreet sex lives in the convent. Celibacy was a cornerstone of their vows, but not all nuns found this aspect agreeable. Contrary to the common belief that nuns lead celibate lives, even medieval convents had their share of scandals that left the church red-faced. One infamous case was the scandal involving the nuns of Poissy. Founded by King Philip IV in 1304, the Abbey of Poissy gained notoriety for severe misconduct and illicit behavior. The nuns there were reported to have engaged in outrageous mischief and debauchery, defying the very essence of their celibate vows. The tales of these nuns' indiscretions didn't just embarrass the church. They also fueled many bawdy jokes and proverbs at the expense of the king and the ecclesiastical authorities. The salacious stories from Poissy became legendary, highlighting the gap between the ideal of religious celibacy and the human desires that persisted even within the convent walls. These nuns, who were supposed to lead lives of piety and restraint, sometimes found themselves caught in the throes of forbidden passions, proving that the lure of romance and sensuality could infiltrate even the most sacred of spaces. Another scandal involving medieval nuns was so notorious that it inspired a film. The film depicts a convent in turmoil, where a power struggle ensues after the death of the Mother Superior. Various nuns vied for the prestigious role, and one ambitious aspirant was willing to go to any lengths to secure it, including offering sexual favors. This sordid tale of corruption, sexual intrigue, and the misuse of power within the church underscores how the enforced celibacy led to sinful behavior. The nuns' attempts to navigate the unnatural rule of abstinence resulted in a dramatic power play filled with all the salacious details of human desire and ambition. This scandal, chronicled in a book published in 1829 and translated from French to Italian, highlights the unnaturalness of requiring nuns to abstain from sex. The enforced celibacy, rather than being a divine mandate, is a human-made rule that often led to the very behaviors it sought to prevent. The sexual shenanigans and power plays within the convent suggest that when natural human desires are suppressed, they can manifest in more disruptive and sinful ways. This humorous argument highlights the irony that the Church's strict enforcement of celibacy often resulted in the opposite of its intended purity and piety. Another scandal involved the convent of San Zaccaria, founded in the 9th century and reputed to house the remains of Saint Zachariah, the father of John the Baptist. This prestigious institution, however, became infamous for the shocking conduct of its nuns. Over time, it turned into a place where wealthy Venetian families sent their daughters who had been involved in publicly known love affairs. Instead of reforming their ways, these nuns secretly continued their romantic liaisons, forming relationships with local men. Interestingly, some of these men were notable figures within Venetian society, further complicating the scandal and highlighting the hypocrisy and moral failings within the supposedly sacred walls of the convent. The scandal at the Nazareth convent of the 14th century involved several nuns and local clergy members. The prioress of the convent, Sister Beatrice, found herself at the center of controversy for allegedly condoning and even participating in illicit sexual relationships. Her actions led to her dismissal from the leadership position within the convent, and other implicated nuns also faced expulsion. The scandal rocked the community and necessitated stringent reforms to restore order and uphold the convent's reputation. The incident underscored the challenges religious institutions face in maintaining the standards of celibacy and moral conduct amidst human frailties and temptations. Despite her outwardly pious demeanor, Sister Isabel, a prominent nun in a 13th century French abbey, was entangled in a scandalous affair. She maintained the facade of devoutness while secretly engaging in a romantic relationship with a local knight. The scandal eventually reached the ears of the king, who happened to be her brother, compelling him to intervene and restore order within the abbey. The incident exposed the tension between religious devotion and human desires, highlighting the complexities and challenges faced by individuals bound by vows of chastity and the expectations of moral rectitude. Abbess Marguerite von Meerfield, a figure in late 15th century Germany, became embroiled in a scandal she could not conceal. Her clandestine affair resulted in her becoming pregnant by a local nobleman, an indiscretion that ultimately led to her resignation. The scandal tarnished the convent's reputation, subjecting it to increased scrutiny. The church intervened to enforce stricter adherence to the vows of celibacy among the nuns, aiming to restore order and uphold the moral standards expected of religious institutions. This episode underscored the challenges abbesses and nuns face in maintaining their vows of abstinence while navigating the complexities of human relationships and societal expectations. Do you think nuns' practices in the medieval period and today are the same? Share your opinions in the comments section below. Don't forget to subscribe to stay updated and ensure you never miss out on future videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again next time.